Turn your video on so we can say hello.
Hello.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
Nice to see you. Hi, Jamie Ann.
You.
David. Well, we're gonna wait a couple minutes because I'm sure we'll have more people joining us. Although it is this very strange, hi Sandy, week and such a gloomy day. I'm happy to hear somebody's moment of joy because I'm struggling a bit myself. Oh, that's not true. My moment of joy is that I get to talk to my good friend Leila Cartier.
That's generous.
Watch Good Morning America this morning. They had two fabulous, hysterical, wonderful segments, which made my day a little bit brighter. One of them was a house that was decorated for Halloween with lights that had music with it. That was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. And the other was a woman who is a graphic designer, but decided to create images using food. And so on a plate, she has a picture of somebody's face. She started with her own, and then she used food to create this fabulous gown of herself. The next one she did was Dion. You know who I mean?
Celine Dion.
Celine Dion, and used mustard to create her dress. That was this elegant gold gown. And then she did one for the three main newscasters on Good Morning America this morning that she revealed. They were just amazing. So if you want some little boost today, those two segments, if you can go look at them, will be joyful. We need that.
All right, I'm gonna check that out after we're done.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I watched, what is the movie, Elisa?
My octopus teacher, my teacher, the octopus, or something like that.
That was totally awesome. I watched that last night.
I watched part of that, I want to finish it. Wow, it was. They are so smart.
Unbelievable. The way that it changes colors as it moves and can camouflage itself and was playful and smart.
I think we may all be just living in the octopus world. We just don't realize it.
Although we can't regenerate an arm the way it can, though. That's the only problem.
Yeah, we can't change colors. I mean, they can do a lot of stuff we can't do.
We're actually living in a crab world because everything is slowly but surely turning into crabs. The crab body plan has evolved independently 5 different times in 5 different strains of ancient crustaceans. So the long
further, please.
Well, it's just like the long, course of history bends towards the crab. Just everything eventually evolves into like that crab shape.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's like a very effective
body plan.
Mechanical form.
Yeah.
Got it. I don't know. It doesn't seem as effective as an octopus.
It's super flexible, and you don't have all your soft, squishy bits on the outside, which is a huge advantage.
That is a good point. There's soft and squishy bits.
This conversation is really going to constrain my seafood ordering habits going forward, though, I think.
I know I'm right there with you, David. I really like octopus, but I can't bring myself to eat it anymore.
Yeah, an emotional connection.
I'm trying not to think about how smart pigs are because I really like bacon. Jamie Ann says her body is changing into a crab shape since COVID. Nice one.
Well, I mean, if we're going to make realistic sci-fi aliens, most of them should probably have a crab body plan.
Okay, so that's how we'll recognize our invaders.
Yeah.
Well, we have an intimate circle today, but that's okay. We are going to forge ahead with our talk and make sure no one's stuck in the waiting room. Nope.
No, I'll be sharing the history with the historians themselves.
Yeah, where's Clara? What the heck? Okay. I am very honored to be talking about CraftNOW today and to introduce everyone to Leila Cartier, who's the executive director. We are going to start. I actually wrote notes, so I should probably pay attention to them. We're going to start by acknowledging that we're on the traditional homeland of the Lenni Lenape people. We pay respect to Lenape peoples of the past, present, and future, and their continuing presence in the homeland and throughout the Lenape diaspora. I also want to acknowledge the sad and disturbing events of this week here in Philadelphia, and hope that our communion through craft today will be healing. As we move forward with our Lunch and Learn series for the Clay Studio, please remember that we are offering this free programming based on our desire to bring our community together and continue to have that collegiality that we so desperately need in these times. So if you're interested in donating, please consider doing that. I'm sure that Raymond or Shannon will put the link for donation in the chat. And now I'll turn to Leila. Leila Cartier is the executive director of CraftNOW Philadelphia, which unites organizations to promote the historic and contemporary role of the city in the fields of craft and making. Her studio practice is located in 1241 Carpenter Studios and Project Space in South Philadelphia, and she's represented by the Schmidt-Dean Gallery. From 2010 to 2015, Cartier was the director of exhibitions at the William King Museum of Art in her hometown of Abingdon, Virginia, an underserved area of the Appalachian coal fields with little to no other access to the arts. Her curatorial projects consisted of bringing art from around the world to the region, documenting and exhibiting material culture from Southwest Virginia and Northeast Tennessee, and presenting regional contemporary art in all media. Leila earned an MFA in painting and drawing from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and concurrently studied Arabic language at DePaul University with a Jacob K. Javits Fellowship. Her BFA in Art and Art History from Moore College of Art and Design in Philadelphia included a year spent with the Temple University Rome program. Welcome, Leila.
Thank you.
We are going to share some images with you, but mostly we're gonna kind of talk more about ideas. Just gonna use this as a guide for our conversation.
I want to thank Jen for having me here today to talk about CraftNOW. She is one of my constant collaborators. The organization was founded to unite all of the amazing galleries, museums, collectors, curators, makers across the city, and Jen is a leader among them.
That's generous. Thanks, Leila. I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about the history of CraftNOW and the mission. So I know we have one of our co-founders, David Seltzer, on the line. And the Clay Studio was a founding board member, although it was a colleague of mine who started out on that committee before I joined the Clay Studio. But right from the beginning, even in my previous position at the Art Museum, everyone who was related to craft perked their ears up and definitely paid attention when the proposal to start this organization was shared. So do you want to talk a little bit about the genesis of CraftNOW?
I will. So I missed that very first year, like you, but I have been with the organization since. So this is going to be our 6th year of programs. Essentially, Clara Hollander and David Seltzer met one night, I believe, at the Philadelphia Museum of Art after a few glasses of wine, and both were talking about and interested in the way the arts can come together and create community and larger activity and economic prosperity. And by taking all of these siloed institutions and creating a unified platform, they would achieve greater audiences, and the ability to do new kinds of programming that wasn't necessarily attainable single-handedly. So since then, we have focused on programs that unite a lot of different institutions, academics, makers, such as publications, symposia. We do an extensive marketing program to help amplify the voices. So I like to say that 2 + 2 = 100, for example. Like if Clay Studio has 100 people and Fabric Workshop has 100 people, together they might actually have 500 people. And we have seen positive results from this program. We can't say that there's necessarily another program like it that we found, so we're kind of charting our own territory with this.
Yeah, we've looked around the country and done research and tried to find parallel organizations, but most of them have more, anything that's related has more of like a class-based model or a craft fair-based model, whereas CraftNOW is really just an organization meant to amplify, which is so important. I often, well, I take any chance I can to talk about the history of craft, especially in Philadelphia, as most of you on the call know. But it's the fact that craft is really infused into our whole city that I think has resulted in this great number of organizations and artists, but just as the idea of craft itself has been not as well promoted as we would like in the field, the idea that Philadelphia is one of the most important craft cities in the country has not, I don't think, gotten enough attention until now. And we've had some amazing things just happen in the last year, right, Leila, about getting national attention. So I just wanted to,
I don't know if you want to make the presentation full screen.
oh, is it not?
So
What can you see there?
you can see the whole PowerPoint.
Oh, that's funny, because I can only see one.
So the next slide, if you'll go to it. So just in the last year, we have worked with, for example, the American Craft Council. Actually, we started working with them a number of years ago to bring their conference here to the city. So we had a national audience of educators and curators. I think there were about 500 people here ultimately. So what we did was act as like a Rolodex for them, and we helped generate tours and unify everybody and make sure that everyone came to the table and showcased what they had to offer. And part of that project was we decided we wanted, oh, that's good, to have a takeaway. If you'll go back up to the red slide, the second one.
Nope. Sorry, everybody. I thought I had this fancy new way to use the PowerPoint, but I guess I haven't learned it yet.
That we discovered last night. So when we knew that the American Craft Council was coming to Philadelphia, at the same time, Clara had this vision that she wanted to have a book for our 5th anniversary, which was last year. And so the culmination of those two things resulted in us putting together Craft Capital. So we wanted to kind of plant a flag in the ground and say Philadelphia is the capital of craft. All roads lead here, and truly they do at times. I think we raised a few eyebrows, but most people will agree that the city has a tremendous history and more resources, more avenues toward support. So capital, we think of it not only as place, but prominence, economics, resources. So we published a book together with Glenn Adamson last year, and he brought in about 10 scholars. Oh, there it is. And Jessica Corcunis. And so the idea was that the book was something that conference goers could take away as a reminder of how important craft is in a community and how it can activate the city, which again was part of the original mission of the organization. Oh, there's Nakashima.
Yeah.
Yes, you can think about Nakashima, Wharton Esherick, you know, modern studio craft. And then what we have today is just this amazing, thriving scene.
Yeah, so important. So that is related to, well, you already mentioned that the, you know, the craft show was a major reason why CraftNOW has chosen to target November and this week.
Right. So every year we put together an itinerary of events around the Philadelphia Museum of Art Contemporary Craft Show, which interestingly is or has been historically the largest major fundraising event for the museum. And with the funds, they are able to purchase objects for the contemporary craft collection and support the museum. But they're also bringing together dozens and dozens, at times hundreds of amazing contemporary artists from all over the country and as well as internationally. This year, of course, it's going to be entirely virtual. And they are maintaining the mission that they want to support the artists so that their practices can survive beyond this moment. So that's coming up next Friday through Sunday with a preview on Thursday night.
Yeah, that's going to be really exciting and so great that they figured out a way to keep it vital during this moment. I can't believe it's already happening next week. And that also kind of reiterates another thing that CraftNOW is really about, which is to support the artists. And I think a lot of the organizations in Philadelphia, being nonprofit, have this ability to focus on the artist and what's best for them, because making a robust environment where artists can thrive is the best way to continue the culture of craft in Philadelphia.
So if you go to the next slide, part of what we do, nope, the one before. I have to do this tomorrow, so I'm glad. It's always tricky when somebody else is running the slideshow. So part of what we do, again, is put together that portfolio of what's happening around the city of Philadelphia at the same time. So generally, we would be putting together a brochure. We still have all of our exhibitions listed online. In an effort to keep the portfolio together this year, because some galleries are closed or some of them weren't really sure what exhibitions they were going to have up during November, we put an asterisk, which is indicated at the bottom of the screen, next to the new exhibitions for this November. So we highlight all of the galleries around the city, hoping that people will want to come in and not only just think about and visit the craft show, but also go to some of the galleries and museums, studio spaces. And then on the next slide, we offer the annual symposium, so bringing together scholars, makers, and patrons for an afternoon of contemporary dialogue in craft, which has had some amazing keynote speakers. I think we're going to talk about a few of them later. Roberto Lugo, Abraham Thomas, again, Glenn Adamson. Last year was Michelle Fisher. And then we also have, I think the next slide is CraftNOW Create. So traditionally that has been a day of activity in the Kimmel Center where about 14 different make and take stations are set up. It's really like a kind of a carnival where everyone can go around and try their hand at something made in wood or textiles. We tried to get glass, but that just didn't work. They were offering tours of the glass studio over at University of the Arts. So again, this idea of bringing everyone together and promoting, if someone is interested in what's happening at the fabric workshop table, then they're going to know the fabric workshop is there in the city and it's open all year round, and they might sign up for a class and start frequenting them more often, or learn about the clay studio, or learn that all of these amazing things are all around and they hadn't thought about tapping into them before without this program. So I remember There are a couple things about CraftNOW Create. I remember the very first one was in 2016. And it was right after the presidential election, and a lot of people were very emotional about it. And there was a young girl at the fabric workshop table that created all these buttons that said she. We were doing button making with them. And it just made me realize that she was communicating something through object making. And that was when I really dug my heels in with CraftNOW, because I saw the community that it was bringing together. I saw how important that day was during that emotional week, where people could come and think about something else and be inspired and educated. And so here we are. We still have CraftNOW Create this year, which I think we're going to talk about maybe a little later. I can just go ahead and mention it now. Thanks to the Joseph Robert Foundation, we've put together 500 take-home kits, and we're doing a virtual program on November 7th with instructions. So Clay Studio delivered 400 pounds. I think I saw Megan on the call, of air dry clay, and Shannon is going to be our host, because she's much more entertaining than I am. And we're going to do kite making and monster head making and dragonfly making and all of these things on Saturday morning. So I'm really excited to see how that is going to come together, and just really so thankful that we're still able to deliver this program in some way.
Shannon's more entertaining really than anyone I know, so you don't feel bad about that. The thing I love about CraftNOW Create in person, and I think it's probably going to happen virtually too, is that the adults are just as excited about these projects that we are aiming to children as the kids are, and the adults get in there and make stuff. And this is, it's about informing people, as you said, about the fact that craft exists and that people can take something that starts as a simple child's project. And, the other end of the spectrum of all of these crafts is highly trained professional artists who are making really amazing, important artwork. So it's the gateway into understanding all those other things for people who otherwise might not even know it exists. I mean, as a art history student in my master's program, nobody told me that there was a thing called craft art. It wasn't until I got out into the professional world and saw it that it became vital to me and really even known.
So on that, I'll say, because Jamie Ann, I think, is on the call from the James Renwick Alliance. I just moderated their Distinguished Educators Award, and we talked a lot about craft education and preparing for that presentation. And it's much, much harder to find craft now, especially because the schools have closed down the wood shops. People don't have sewing rooms and machines in their homes as much anymore. And even once if you're able to be lucky enough to find your way to an art school, craft is equally buried within the programs there. So finding yourself to the wood shop to discover furniture making or textiles is something that has to be deliberate. And so we want to make sure that as many people as possible are exposed at every stage to the possibilities of craft, whether it's for recreation or vocation or therapy, communication, fun, whatever someone wants.
Yeah, especially in this world where we're so cut off from the producers of the objects that we make, it's empowering to even know how to make a simple object like this extremely messy scarf that I made. It's not perfect by any means, but somebody more talented than I made beautiful yarn, and then I kind of clumsily made it into something else, but I made it, so it's special. And I often think about a tour I gave at the art museum once to school children in the furniture gallery. And this little boy looked at a chair I was talking about from the 18th century, and he said, "Is it real?" And in that question, I think is sort of the most profound question at the center of what we're doing. Like, what is it what did he even mean by is it real? And there are just so many interesting layers to that question that I hope one day that little boy figures, you know, his way into making something so he knows what is real.
If he had gone to CraftNOW Create one year, we had chair making as a demonstration. Not everybody got to make their own chair and take it home, but they got to watch the process of what it was and participate actually in putting together the pieces of the chair.
Right.
I have a good photo of that. So here's our book, and it's a craft personified by Martha Mcdonald, Climbing the Steps of the Museum. She's an amazing performance artist that generally begins with a really intense research project that then she teaches herself how to do typically some craft, whether it's paper folding or crocheting, really elaborate botanical flowers, or she did a glass blowing project with Wheaton Arts that we did a tour of last year where she made instruments and had a performance, like a musical performance. So I got to visit her studio as we were putting this book together, and she was showing me how she makes all these things. And she was like, but really it's just about music. I was like, really? Wow. I was incredible. She's an incredible multidisciplinary artist.
Right, it's about music, except it's also a hand-blown glass trumpet in order to make the music.
But all of those things that she does so brilliantly just are really an avenue for her to write music and perform. It was wonderful.
And CraftNOW provided an opportunity for people to take a bus, you know, and easily get down to Wheaton. So it's, again, it's that facilitator amplifier role that is so important.
Right. So something else we have done for a few years, we have November proclaimed by the city officially and the mayor's office as Craft Month. And there's a co-founder, Clara Hollander, very proud with one of our proclamations. Again, that just helps amplify the message of how important craft is for our community and our city. This is an example of the map that we would put together in our brochure, highlighting all of the different resources and exhibitions. So on our website now, if you go to CraftNOW, I think it's an Explore tab. We just recently added one tab that includes all the studio and maker spaces, but it includes, the original one includes galleries, museums, and retail, which needs expanding. So if anyone has a place they would like added to the map, everyone is always free to contact me.
Right, and we'll look at the website in a few minutes. I think it's just worth repeating the fact that the American Craft Council, the national organization, came here to Philadelphia last year.
We're so fortunate that that was last fall and we were able to launch the book and bring everyone together. I was talking about this recently with Glenn Adamson, how cities are, we're in a crisis, and the reason we all love living in cities is not accessible to us at this moment. But platforms like this are allowing us to still come together virtually and share ideas and resources. So new programs, that's a good segue into this slide. New programs this year. So at the beginning of the year, we had done so much work leading up to the conference and the book, and it was kind of like, okay, what in the world are we going to do next? And we had a few things on the docket. The first program, I believe, was this Famer Symposium. Famer stands for the Foundation of Advancement of International Medical Education and Research. So the idea was that I was creating a bridge over to another field, right? The medical arts were, if you think about back to Da Vinci or early medical research, right? Those developed out of the arts in a way. So, and the arts are always open to new audiences and stand ready to educate in new and innovative ways. I talk a lot about art and craft as a means to educate, not art education, because I think some people think, oh, well, you're just learning about art, but that's not necessarily true. You can be learning about math and science and other disciplines. So we were going to be meeting at PAFA, and generally Famer brings in educators from all over the world for a 3-week symposium. So obviously this was March 25th. The world was really drastically changing in ways that we had not previously known. So this was the first Zoom symposium that I think a lot of people attended, and we had breakout rooms. And you had people over in Saudi Arabia or Nepal or Colombia, South America, talking to craftspeople in Philadelphia about, and they were sharing similar problems, which was how do you educate in this new environment? Some of the conversations were really fascinating because they were each approaching it from a different angle. So that was really interesting. And from that, we also continued doing virtual programs with First Friday. Jen, this was something you approached me about. Generally in the city, galleries are open. It's just a known quantity. There's no organization running First Friday. Everybody just knows that there are going to be gallery openings that night, and you can go out to a restaurant, get a drink with your friends, and gallery hop. So in order to reserve that space for everybody, we CraftNOW took the role as moderator and host, and I think we've had 5, did we count? We took a break in June and another break in August, and we're also pausing in November for the craft show to open. But I'd say we've reached probably, I think we've estimated 400 to 500 people, which has been really exciting. People that may not have otherwise attended a gallery opening, or we've also been able to expand geographically out to Michener and Wharton Esherick and outside of Old City, Paradigm Gallery, for example. So that's another program that we've started offering this year based on recent events.
And I think that both of these things really amplify that we are looking for benefits within these strange new times, and that CraftNOW has its finger on the pulse of how we can not just pivot in these times, but figure out ways to bring people closer together as we move forward. The Famer Symposium was so important to me because, as you said, Leila, it was the first time that I had ever been on a Zoom, for sure. And the fact that there were people, as you say, from all over the world just immediately brought home the fact that we were able to do something that we had never done before. And that I could go into a breakout room and talk to somebody who was in Africa about how craft and medicine are related was exhilarating. That I don't think it would have been possible really if it was in person. And so it was just really great. And then the virtual First Friday, again, just I think we're going to find ways to take aspects of this and move them forward into the future as we do get a chance to spend more time together whenever
I think we all know there will be some sort of hybrid model going forward. We don't know what exactly that's going to look like. So we'll continue to innovate.
Yeah, and I know what I was also going to say, that it's an ecological issue. We had been talking before the pandemic shut down, like just a couple of weeks before, you and I and Elizabeth Agro were talking about considering the carbon footprint of flying people back and forth for symposia, and even borrowing works of art from far away because we're using, airplanes that we don't need to use. And so it was this strange sort of like answer to an ecological problem, as you're saying. So we'll have to figure out a way to do it as a hybrid into the future. And again, innovating in a major way in the middle of this crisis, just totally finding ways to move forward. So I know this was a big project of David's. Leila, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so again, this was last November, as if we didn't have enough on our docket. We organized an economic roundtable at PDIC, Pennsylvania, or Philadelphia.
PIDC.
PIDC. Oh, there, it's written right there, Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation, to talk about the importance of craft at the intersection of economic development. And what's interesting, Adam Kenny from Handmade in Pittsburgh has this really wonderful graphic that shows a jar with these large stones in it. And he says, generally the stones represent tech and eds and meds, right? That's where cities and urban planners tend to focus their attention on drawing resources to technology and medicine and education, because those are the largest sectors. But there's all these gaps that when you have all these large stones in a jar that need to be filled, and can be filled by creative businesses and small businesses. And the craft sector is a really vibrant sector that's overlooked and underutilized. And I think, again, at the beginning of COVID, you had makers creating masks and 3D printed PPE, and really highlighting how important it is to know who your makers are in your community. So we have been working on this economic development program where we're identifying what resources are available here in the city that already exist to support artists and makers, because oftentimes artists are really talented at making things, but maybe not talented, or at least not educated in how to do their taxes or start a business. I know when I was in art school, I didn't take a business class. And so what are the resources that are already here, identify what is needed to fill the gaps, and advocate and plan to have those gaps filled. So we spent a lot of time this spring and summer on the craft business survey, which included interviewing about 125 artists in the area, as well as what are called local branding initiatives. And the local branding initiatives across the country include Made in NYC, SF Made in San Francisco, Made in Baltimore, Made in DC, et cetera. And these branding platforms do what CraftNOW is doing for institutions, but directly for makers. So they create a marketing portfolio. They help amplify what's being made in their area. They provide resources, business classes, support, peer-to-peer networking, all of these kinds of programs. So the board is currently looking at and evaluating the amazing research done by Andrew Dahlgren and Heather Holliday to see what are the next steps so that we can continue to push this conversation forward, because currently there's no entity in Philadelphia that unifies what's being made in the city from a craft and small batch manufacturing and making perspective.
Yeah, and it's so important because craft is really merging arts and creative problem solving and manufacturing in a way that no other sector is doing. I wanted to just acknowledge that, well, we did, that CraftNOW also in that moment of transition is very aware of social justice issues in the United States, and feel it's important to, again, amplify, I think I've said that word 72 times so far today, that we feel that craft is a force for good.
We did pause our programming in June. We believe that craft is very accessible to all communities, all ethnicities, all age groups. We want craft to be available when other resources are not, for communication, advocacy, expression. And that really is at the center of our symposium this year. Craft as activism, craft as change agent. And we'll be talking more about that in a moment as well.
We'll talk about the current symposium, but we just wanted to kind of acknowledge just a couple of the previous symposia that have occurred.
So we went putting this together. We kind of were thinking a little bit about the 6-year now history, 5-year, 6-year. This was my first symposium, which was in Christchurch. And I think Jack Cotter posted it on our social media as we found an epically appropriate place to talk about craft. So as this kind of a devotion to the handmade. And that year, the thematic approach was analog digital. We were thinking about analog in terms of like people think of craft as being very rudimentary or something. I don't know.
Traditional skills. Yeah.
Very traditional, whereas there's so many technologies applied to craft and making today. Like the CraftNOW Create slide you showed was a little girl looking at a 3D printer, which I think was out of shot in that photograph. And it was probably the same year as this, actually.
I think so. And just, we talked a lot that year about how craft unifies those two things. Like you have to understand traditional ways of making and physically doing it with your hands in order to transfer that to a digital means, and that you need them to be hand in hand, excuse the expression, in order for it to be effective. And of course, you're looking at the church where George Washington worshipped. So he may have been sitting in a pew with this exact same view, just maybe not looking at Glenn Adamson, but hopefully
On a bench made here in Philadelphia.
His spirit was there that day. The crafter of our.
And then there's any art historians in the audience will recognize that's a Duchamp wine rack, which is a manufactured object. So that's actually quite appropriate.
Glenn, he always does a good job.
So last year we had Michelle Miller-Fisher, again, talking about craft capital, and she was talking about craft versus design. She had just opened Designing Different Futures, but she spoke about something you just mentioned, which was craft being more environmentally conscious, right? Design has this built-in planned obsolescence because they want you to buy whatever's next and participate in like what's new. Whereas craft objects tend to be thought of, I think, as more of an heirloom or something to be treasured and kept, something a bit more timeless.
Yeah. And then this is just a little overview of textually what we're going to talk about, but I think Leila can explain that as we.
So our cultures of making, this is starting tomorrow. We have Hinda, so cultures of making we took from the book, the subtitle of the book, Craft Capital, and we're focusing now like into community and how craft can be the center of culture making, basically. Hinda recently released Crafting Dissent, which was a publication that included many of the panelists that are listed. And also joining us tomorrow will be Karen Patterson from the Fabric Workshop and the upcoming artist in residence, Rose B. Simpson, who was from the Santa Clara Pueblo. So again, we have more of a national audience or national program this year. A lot of Hinda's panelists are located further north in Boston, New York, etc. And then on the 6th, we have Vashti Dubois, the executive director of the Colored Girls Museum, speaking. We were both fortunate enough to hear her object story at the American Craft Council last year, which was talking about the importance of handmade objects in a personal history and personal narrative, which is at the center, I would say, of the curatorial work she does at the Colored Girls Museum. And this is also the 25th year anniversary of the Wingate International Residency Program at the Center for Art and Wood. So Nava Milliken has a panel put together And Christine of Pentimenti Gallery will be talking to John Prius, who has an exhibition opening. And this will be the first time Pentimenti is joining the symposium.
Oh, and I just will add that on November 7th, Pentimenti, the Center for Art and Wood, and the Clay Studio are part of a small by appointment walking tour. So we'll have information about that on our website, but people can sign up and at 4 at a time. So socially distanced and safely, we'll be leading a few tours that day around 2 to 3 organizations, so people can have private tours with the artists and the curators. So it should be, we can only serve, I don't know, I think it's 12 people, but very lucky 12 people, and it's free. So this is very important.
This is very important and has been one of the more interesting, challenging transference of a program into a digital platform. So generally we would be having a fundraiser in September at some amazing and dazzling makerspace. We've been to Isaiah Zagar's studio in South Philly, Badi Badu, which is Warren Muller's space up on American Avenue, where he does these absolutely gorgeous chandeliers. Last year we were at the Deacon, which was newly renovated Baptist church that had retained a lot of the original handcrafted details, such as the stained glass windows. And we would have a celebration, bring everyone together, have a big auction. So this year we're doing it virtually. We have the auction up on GiveSmart, which some friends of ours at the Clay Studio have been helping us, and In Liquid has helped us. They're already experts at virtual auctions. So we're going to close it opened today. It's open. The auction is open. Isn't that great how automation works? So the live event, what?
We'll put it in the chat so people can click on it.
Yes. If you go to our events tab, all of these events are listed that are coming up. And we're closing with a live event on November 14th that's going to be really entertaining. I can't tell you everything that's going to happen, but because you have to be there to see it. So we are going to have our past keynotes there. I think Roberto Lugo is going to join us, a Clay Studio favorite, as well as Michelle Fisher, Glenn Adamson, Abraham Thomas. Abraham was just named the new curator of architecture, design, and craft at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which is outstanding. Proud to know him. I took him to an Eagles game last year, so he owes me big. And we have Glenn talking about the book. We have some scholarly information. Rago is going to be joining us to talk about the importance of some of the pieces we have in the auction, such as a Judith Schechter rare sculpture. We have a pair of Lugo mugs. We have this piece here is a gorgeous Don Miller sculpture, wooden sculpture. Helen Drutt is auctioning dinner for two and a private tour of her library, COVID permitting, weather permitting, in the garden, and a lot of really other wonderful things. I mean, even so, we put together an online catalog, and just that online catalog shares some of the amazing stories of artists and institutions in our city.
I think I'll just open that up while we're talking. And anyone who has a question or just wants to share, maybe one of our board members would like to share their thoughts. Go ahead and do that while I'm opening up this amazing.
Jamie Ann mentioned that all the honorees from this past weekend for the Distinguished Educators Award had connection to Philly. So Carol Savillon is from Philly, and she founded Craft in America, the PBS documentary series, which just released a new episode on democracy. Sandra Sherman was from Philly. She's now in San Diego. Sid Carpenter is here, Tyler grad, and then Warren Seelig, who currently lives in Maine but travels back and forth to teach at University of the Arts.
I want to live in Maine. No, I don't. I want to live in Philadelphia, but it's nice too.
Oh, there's our catalog.
So if everyone can just see, you can click through and you get some really important information. This is a sculpture, a glass sculpture by Judith, which is not her normal.
Very rare.
And it's amazing. Yeah. So I just put the link to this in the chat. So you can all take your time and look through these amazing pieces. And I'm also going to put in the chat the link to the symposium, because I want all of you to make sure that you sign up for that. And can you talk a little bit about the 2-day idea?
2-day idea.
Well, just that people can come to either or both.
Yeah, so the symposium, we would have normally had one big long afternoon, but because we all spend so much time on our computers, I mean, even a 2.5-hour program is quite long, but you can come to the symposium either both days. You can drop in for an hour, stay for the whole thing. It's very flexible.
It's going to be, if you don't, you know, I really didn't know much about the Colored Girls Museum before we saw Vashti at the craft conference last year. And it's a really vibrant and important place that doesn't have enough attention. So I just hope that people have a chance to come in and learn about that, as well as these other amazing programs. Like Hinda's book really brings together some Philadelphia art historians who are talking about the connection between historical objects and contemporary craft. And I'll just show you my favorite connection that I think Betsy Holly will talk about tomorrow.
Ray has shared some fun comments in the chat.
Oh, good.
He remembers the Glenn's lecture, and he brought together a lot of ideas that were swirling around confusingly. I think Glenn is really good at doing that.
He does. He's so great at connecting. He makes all these very complex points, and he always, to me, makes the audience feel, you know, like they're coming right along with him. I always feel like he makes me feel smart. And, you know, you can listen to people who will say something complex that makes you kind of feel confused, but he does a great job of doing that. So here's the Mifflin portrait that I'm hoping Betsy talks about, wherein Mrs. Mifflin is making tape or ribbon. And this is actually an early example of craftivism, because she is making the ribbon for herself, because they're protesting and boycotting any goods from England. So she needed to figure out how to do that. So she, although women at the time certainly were trained in how to make things, the fact that they have chosen to show her doing this in their formal portrait is quite a statement of both of their dedication to their social activism cause. So it's nothing new. Any other questions? I haven't looked. Gotta look at the chat over here. Nope. Great. Well, I just want to thank Leila again and all of you for joining us. We had I had a lovely time talking to you as usual, and now we have a wonderful recorded version of this overview of how important CraftNOW is to the culture of making here in Philadelphia.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you everyone for being here. It's good to see all of you.
Indeed.
I hope to see you at our many upcoming events.
Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow at the symposium.
For sure.
Okay, thanks. Bye, everybody.